Aloha! This is Jason from Hawaii. Welcome to a special edition of the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. In this episode, I interviewed Howard Wong and Josh Stafford, the writers of Damn Cursed Children from Source Point Press. Now, let's get started. Howard and Josh, welcome to Comics for Fun and Profit. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great, man. Thank you
Excellent.
for having us.
Thank you.
No, I'm going to start off. Thank you very much for letting me interview you guys. Thank you very much. And also, before I continue, I want to give a big shout out to. I'm going to pronounce. Hopefully, I pronounce his last name correctly. Josh Warner, Source Point Press, the creative chief officer, for arranging this interview. So I really want to give a big shout out to him. Just thank you very much. And like I said, thank you guys for joining us on Comics for Fun and Profit. Before we begin, can you guys promote your social medias? So where can listeners follow you?
Ooh, good question. Let me think. Twitter would be Howard Wong and the number 1, so it's Howard Wong 1.
Mm-hmm.
Instagram would be at the real Howard Wong. I'm trying to think, remember and I believe Facebook is also Howard Wong 1 as well. Those are the 3. But if you need to find them again, you can go to my blog, which is howard-wong.blogspot.com.
Mm-hmm.
I have them all listed there. Hopefully the links are working. And for Josh,
I'm not as good at social media as Howard is. Howard's a pro, but I do the Mayfair Theater social media, so I kind of sneak around Instagram and Twitter more under the Mayfair Theater banner. I do have an Instagram that's just called @BatTurtle_Mayfair. And then I'm on Facebook as well as Bat Turtle or just Josh Stafford. But most of the time I do a ton of Mayfair Theater promotion online. And then now the past few months just been trying to keep up with Howard of doing all the Damn Cursed Children promotion because we've been lucky enough to be doing lots of interviews and stuff the last few months.
Again, thank you guys for joining us on Comics for Fun and Profit. Now, I'm going to start off with basically, where were you guys born and raised? And you don't have to give birth dates or anything, but yeah, because I don't want someone to go, I was born.
Well, many moons ago, I was born in Scarborough, which is odd enough. I just remember that many moons ago, and I basically was born and raised in Toronto, in and out of the city core and outside of it. Most of my life was spent there. So very boring, I guess. and for Josh,
I was born in a small town called Shawville, Quebec, and still have family up there. But I've lived most of my life in Ottawa. I think I moved to Ottawa when I was around 4 years old or so. So briefly went out to Vancouver for school, but am back here. So I consider Ottawa my hometown.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. All right. Let's see. This question is from Drew, one of the co-hosts from Comics for Fun and Profit. What was the first comic you guys read?
Wow. Josh,
I know this just because somebody else asked and I cheated and I Googled Fantastic Four Purple Monsters Snow, and the magic of the internet actually got me to that thing. So it's Fantastic Four number 212. And if you look it up, it's this great cover with the Fantastic Four, and they're in like parkas and they're fighting these giant purple monsters with no heads. And so I was really young, like I was 4, maybe 5, but I think 4. And it was one of those nice stories of just my dad coming home from work randomly picked up a comic because he was probably stopping at the store to get cigarettes or something, But it had an impact because it was just one of those books that I read over and over again and traced and I still have a tattered copy of it, but that kicked off my lifelong comic book ing was that random Fantastic Four issue.
Nice. That is nice. My first one I read, I would say it was a Spider-Man comic, but it wasn't a comic book though.
Yeah.
I think it was a collection, and it was definitely wasn't a regular format. Because it's when I was really, really young. Because I remember my cousin had it, and he wouldn't let me read it, so I would read it when he was sleeping. with those, no joke, with the flashlight and the blanket and all the whole bit. But I remember reading that, and obviously I couldn't read. I remember not being able to read all the words because I was really really young. But
Mm-hmm.
the art and the story hit me because it was just so cool that I kept on going back. And basically, I fell asleep reading it. That's why I got caught because I fell asleep on top of it probably. So that was my first one I read slash couldn't read because I couldn't read all the words. So it was basically his origin story, but I remember it had other stories after that. So
Mm-hmm.
couldn't place exactly what kind of collection it was.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
remember it was a yellow cover for some reason. That's predominantly the background color, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. Let's see, because it sounds like you guys were, basically, you guys were like comic book fans at an early age, right? You guys could say that.
Me for sure, yeah.
Fan, yes. Collecting, no. I started collecting when Image popped out. And I was in high school, and I had some friends who were comic book readers, and they brought a whack of Image comics. I think they skipped first period in high school to go buy them, and they brought them back during lunch. And I was like, "What the heck is that?" Because honestly, no joke, it was because of the production quality of it. And I looked at it, I was like, wasn't the comic books I remember reading, on and off at the corner store, because that's where I would read them. I would, be one of those kids in my group of friends who would bike ride to the comic store and try to sneak read as much as they can before you get kicked out. But that really got me into wanting to buy them and have them. So that's what ended up happening. So from that point on, I started buying and reading comic books that were new and started backtracking stuff. So I wasn't really into it when I was young because my dad nor my cousin, well, my cousins were kind of me. My cousins didn't really collect comic books either. They were sort of like in and out as well. So there was no real family influence. So it was actually friends, but I said really late in the game in high school when I started getting into it deep.
No, it's pretty cool. Because kind of like Howard, it just kind of sounds like, because, the stories I'm sure you would hear is that, someone grows up, they start reading comics when they're young, and then they drop out of high school, because of other things, sports activities, girlfriend, and then they pick it up back when they become adults. But that's pretty cool that yours is you started off in high school. So yeah. Josh, so you said you comic book fan for a long time. You started collecting when you were young too?
Oh yeah, I've never stopped. When I was a kid, it was really this 80s heyday. So I was really young. I was too young to read most of this stuff, but I was anyhow. But like when I was a kid, it was G.I. Joe and Transformers at Marvel.
Yes.
It was Black Suit Spider-Man, Crisis,
Mm-hmm.
and Mirage Ninja Turtles. Like that was a real big thing for me of that black and white era. I got to be like a little 10-year-old snob, so when the cartoon came out, I got to be like, no, this isn't Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles is black and white and all red headbands. And so, I mean, I read Dark Knight Returns. I remember I got that, like my dad got it for me for, I don't remember when it came out, if it was birthday or Christmas, but I got it as a gift. And I had a sense of like, I'm too young to be reading this, but I got through okay without any nightmares or anything. But yeah, just the 80s were just such a great time to be introduced to comics. And then like Howard and I are about the same age. So when Image happened, I was same thing in grade 9 or grade 10. And it's all my fault. Like I bought Youngblood and Brigade and I bought anything with an Image logo on it. And the good stuff too, like the Max and, but I was just in the trenches of that shiny cover and Wizard magazine and I love all that stuff. The Robin comics with the weird like lenticular covers. So yeah, and I'll never stop. I don't really collect comics. Like I don't keep them in like mint condition and bag and board and all that, but I'll never stop reading. It's just like TV or movies. Like it's a life thing for me.
Yeah. Okay. All right. When did you guys decide you guys wanted to be either, I'm going to say this, and you guys can answer it either a comic book writer or a writer?
That is a very good question. Well, my journey into being professionally published is, well, it sounds boring. It's like I submitted something to Image. Surprise. And unlike a lot of people who believe that you need to do a lot of weird stuff to get into being published, my pitch honestly got accepted. Not the best time because I was a father to be. Basically, when I got the green light, my first was born. So it was sort of like day job, being a dad for the first time, and trying to write comic books professionally for the first time. So that was my first jump into the fray at that level. And before I could decide if I wanted to keep doing it, I'd end up doing the second one, and then I had the second kid, which was hilarious, of all times. So after that, funny enough, I actually took a break from comic books because it wasn't really paying bills. So I was just doing anthologies and stuff like that. But then it led into other avenues of things. I ended up working in like mobile games and toys and stuff, and then went back into comic books here and there, but it's never a full-time job. I became a writer. I mean, I was in human resources for a long time, and then before that I was in marketing. So when I got into like writing back in narrative and marketing stuff, I ended up writing creative stuff only. So it's like the Iron Man comic book there. I have a background. I know you can't see it, but
yes,
I did work with Bandai with N30 for Full Metal Ghost. Oh my god, I almost forgot the title of that. Which was a toy. It wasn't really meant to be a comic. That was just a promo stuff. I was doing narrative development for that. So it's this weird roundabout way of me getting back into comics deep was that I always had a passion for it. So if you ask me if I'm a comic book writer, I wouldn't say professionally that I'm a purist. No. I would write anything and everything. So I'm sort of like a writer / comic book writer, I guess would be like the most accurate way of describing myself. But I certainly looked at myself as being a writer probably like 10 years ago when I was like started making money that I could pay the bills with. It sounds like the weird benchmarks, like I can eat with writing. This is going to work out. so that was the moment I was like, hey, I can take this seriously now. I think that's about a decade ago I would say was when I really writing can be a way for a career.
So sorry Josh, before you answer the question, guys, listeners, I know we're doing this in audio. Howard just pointed out your first comic book series that you wrote was After the Cape from Image, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And then also too, I know behind Howard is also his comic book series for Marvel. Was it a one shot or a comic book?
It was a one shot. It was originally released to promote the first Marvel theme park ride.
Yes.
Attraction. It's more of like attraction and ride at Hong Kong Disneyland. It was an Iron Man Experience. So the title for theirs was Iron Man Experience, which was a comic book title, and I thought it was only going to be released at the park. So when I wrote it and constructed it, that was the goal that I had in mind, and I created a local Hong Kong superhero for that, and it was well received. It was really cool. But then Marvel released it again through Diamond, and then we retitled it to Iron Man Hong Kong Heroes. And they threw in 2 variant covers as well, and it sold out. So I was like, because I mentioned, I mean, the direction was for all ages because it's Disneyland, so you can't do certain things that I would normally do for like a Marvel book.
Yes.
Like so it's like I'm looking at kids who might be 6 or wherever the age group may be. So I had to look at the gamut. So when I wrote it, I was like, this is the audience it's going to be. It's the Disney people who probably know maybe nothing about Marvel Comics, that only know about the movies or toys, and then take bits and pieces from that as well as what I know and see what I can do with it. So when it came out through Diamond, I was a little nervous. I'm like, oh no. As I said, I wrote it for a certain audience. I was like, oh no, you guys did that? Oh, I appreciate it. I'm glad you have confidence in it. And I was waiting with bated breath, going, "Oh man, I hope this sells it okay." And when it sold out, I was like, "We did okay, we did better than okay." So very happy about that. But yeah, it was a one shot. And the thing is, it was the most bizarre way to make a comic book because I was literally walking around what the Imagineers built in Disneyland in Hong Kong. So you're looking at real. Well, in quotations, real artifacts. So you see the Mark I suit, you'll see the arc reactor.
Yeah.
You see blueprints that from the film. It's like you sort of sit there and like, my research is basically being here. I don't have to imagine anything too much. I'm literally I want to grab this, and that. I want to change that to something else. And that's literally what I did with the artist there. And it was the most bizarre experience in creating a comic book because it's a physical thing was there.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very, very different.
So I'm sorry. So wait a minute. Did you go actually to Hong Kong to the theme park or?
Yeah, yeah,
Wow, that's pretty.
yeah. So I wrote. I mean, what they did was they built Stark Expo Asia.
Uh-huh.
So it's not just one ride. There's actually different components to it
Mm-hmm.
that you can experience different aspects of the Iron Man, the Avengers universe. But
Mm-hmm.
at that point, it's Iron Man universe. So I rode that ride. It was a 4D ride, probably close to 100 times.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
It's fun. It's definitely fun for the first 10, but but after that, it's sort of like, okay, I get it, but all right.
Mm-hmm.
But but I was there, and the thing was, I experienced it with the artist, just ourselves. So it was
Mm-hmm.
really cool and really different. And then we did it again with just regular folks.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I asked for that because I wanted to see people's reaction.
Mm, yes.
So I know what connected to people and the different age groups. It gives me a quick, snapshot of, okay, kids really are into this aspect of this, which is something I need to construct the story with. So that was really cool because people didn't know obviously what we're doing there. We were just there observing, experiencing what we already did. So that was a really unique experience, as I said, to do that. And the media was nuts. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the footage and the things they built up for the marketing there was incredible. I mean, it's Disney and Marvel combined for marketing. I mean, you can't go wrong. So being in the middle of all that was sort of like, I want to run around and scream like a little kid, but I can't. Got to be professional. The artist looked at me. He's like, "Is it wrong for me to take photos, snapshots of the meeting?" Because even walking into the offices of Disney and
Mm-hmm.
Disney, there's like things that you want to take photos of. Like, I'm not going to mention it here, but he's like, "Can we do that?" I'm like, yeah, I guess so. I'm not because
Yeah, you don't want someone to take your phone away and go, hey,
Yeah, it's kind of unprofessional. But if you want to go for it, share the shots with me afterwards. So it's one of those weird moments where you're like, if you're a geek and you get to go behind Disneyland, you're like walking through the secret areas and all that, and seeing where the costuming is, and where the training is, and where they have their own cafeterias for the actors.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like, this is. You can't, though I'm explaining it to you guys, I have no footage whatsoever, so I can't share them with anybody. But I wish I could in a way, because it's like that weird geekness. Like, I saw the secrets of Disneyland over here and there. So it was, I said, a really bizarre experience to write a comic book from Marvel where you get to walk into things and experience yourself. So very, very different.
Josh, what about you?
So I went to an arts high school, and I was there for visual arts.
Yes.
And I was good enough to be a visual arts high school student, but that's kind of about where it ended. I wanted to get into animation, and that didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up stumbling into getting into a film school.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great. I loved it. So I got to work on a bunch of short films, and the way the school worked is that in the classroom, everyone pitched, and 4 students got their scripts produced, and then everyone pitched, and 4 people got to be directors, and then everyone else just fills out all the other roles. So it was really great. So I got to be like camera operator on one and sound on another, so really learn everything. So that script I did there got into a book about screenwriting. So I've always been into writing. Like I've always, I think, and what's funny is right after I graduated, the school ended up picking up a writing program as well. When I was there, it was everything but. It was dance, drama, visual arts. So in that alternate universe, if writing had been available when I was 13, I probably would have went into that.
Yes.
Because I love comic books, but I think I'm more akin to writing than drawing them. So that's kind of where that started. And then I've always just been a fan. When I wrote a bunch of short films, they were all kind of fantastical and horror films or kind of like sci-fi films. And that's when I met Howard. Is a short film that I wrote and directed got into San Diego Comic-Con. And that's where we first crossed paths. And then in the years after that, it's the way things work. It's good luck and a bit of skill and having a bit of pride in yourself to put yourself out there. But I did in a similar way to how Howard and I kicked off Damn Cursed Children, of in a joking conversation. Another friend of ours had a publishing house here in Ottawa doing some independent books. And I was talking with him about this idea I had for Zomkies, which is zombie monkeys. And so I did an issue, and it just happened. And it happened so crazy fast, where it was another friend of ours, Marco Rudy, knew an artist named Barb Felix, who was in Toronto and looking to do something to pad out a resume. And then Chris knew a colorist, and they liked the book. And so I had to work at it, but I didn't have to find all these other aspects. So all of a sudden, my comic geek dreams came true, and I had a comic book. And we went to Ottawa Comic Con and sold 100 copies in a day, and it was great. So I've done 3 of those Zomkies issues. I've got a 4th one on the go. That led to getting published in a couple of anthologies. One called Flip Volume 2 that's out right now, and that's a what if parallel universe anthology, and one called Strange Romance, which is on Comixology, and it's it's in the style of almost like old EC or old romance books. So I got a story in that. So all of a sudden I found my writing resume padded out a bit, and then Howard and I had been working on this idea on and off for a decade, and with a lot of hard work on Howard's part, we finally got it out there. And it's just another geek dream come true that, and Howard doesn't feel the same way, but I was happy to just have it out. and genuinely, I was there was oh, we sold a couple copies here, or I know my local comic store bought 5 copies, and it was just thrilled. And Howard had the more logical sense of no, we have to keep going, we have to keep trying to sell this, and we did it. And now we're issue 3 is about to come out. It's getting really nice reviews, a lot of nice feedback, and I'm just ecstatic because just to be a comic nerd, to have a comic book out, to self-publish or to do a little one with an Ottawa publisher is great. To get into a little Comixology anthology, that's great. But to have Source Point Press, who I've learned over these past little while has a real good fan base and is really building some respect, is so much fun. Oh, and I got to stumble into writing a episode of DC Superhero Girls as well. And I told Howard, I'm that's it. That's my downhill from there. I got to write the Flash for 3 minutes. So so now, with it being, my nerd dream, I think it's every comic reader's nerd dream.
Yes.
Now I've got a bit of a resume, and it's super fun. So now, Stephen King or somebody said to be a writer, you just have to write. Yeah. And I'm you don't got to make a living. You don't got to, win the awards. You just got to do it. And I'm oh yeah, I did it. I actually have a book. There you go. We're writers. Howard wants to make money.
Before we continue, Josh, your zombie monkey book. I'm sorry, what was the title of it again? And where can people get it if they're interested in this premise?
That's called Zomkies. The first issue is on Comixology, and I've been meaning to kind of try to get the next couple up there as well. The publisher, a very good friend of ours named Chris Waddell, kind of the same excuse that Howard and Robin have had over the years, is he became a dad. So his publishing effort got a little bit sidetracked, but I know he plans to come back and do some more stuff. So the book's out there, a little bit harder to track down, but I have some. If you're really looking for one, contact me, and I can definitely sell you a copy and send that out. It's the thing that makes this kind of stuff so difficult is you write the book and you finish it, and you're we did it. And you're oh no, there's all this other effort you have to do now.
Yes.
You have to keep going. And that's the same if you're a filmmaker or a musician or anything. And we're all guilty of that, where there's times where I gotta, and especially now that Howard and I are in the trenches of Damn Cursed Children, it's very distracting in a good way, but it's really put a couple of other projects just on pause for a while. But I do intend to try to get that second and third issue of Zomkies at least onto Comixology, so it's a little bit easier for people to read, because I know it's on the shelves of a few stores out there, but it's not as easy to get as opening up a previews or anything like that. But it's out there.
Okay. All right. Um, that's the perfect segue to go into how did you guys meet? Josh, you already touched upon on you guys met at San Diego Comic-Con. Now, what year did you guys meet in San Diego Comic-Con?
I think 07.
07? I want to say 07. 07, 08?
07 or 08. But I think, no. 06. 07. No, 07. It's definitely 07. Because my wife was pregnant with the second kid. So it's definitely 07. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was, oh my God, I finally figured it out. It's 07. I had to look at my own. I think of my children, and here we are. So it was San Diego Comic-Con 2007. The place I was staying at, I had some issues with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was walking around town. I bumped into some people I met that same week in Toronto. So one was Attila Ardojani. Sorry about that guy. He was a great, fantastic multimedia artist, I guess would be the best way to describe him. And the other person was Tom Fowler, who has done everything from Planet of the Apes, Green Arrow. What hasn't he done?
Mad Magazine, Star Wars.
You. Yeah, there you go.
Sandman stuff. Yeah, he's got a deep resume.
Right. So I bumped into them literally on the street of San Diego Comic-Con after the first or second day. I think it's first day. And they were asking me what's going on, why you were out walking at this hour by your, I explained to them what was going on in my situation. And then the next day, I think it was on the con floor. I can't remember if it was a con floor or it was after the con again. They asked me if I wanted to stay with them in the condo that they were renting. And I'm like, so how many people were staying there? Oh, me, Attila, of a friend coming over, and then that'd be you. I'm like, that sounds pretty good. Okay, how far is it from the con? It's like 5-minute walk. Okay, this sounds too good to be true. I'm grabbing my bags and I'm coming. Screw it. And that's what I did. And then when I walked through the door, I saw the bedrooms, and I'm like, okay, so that's yours and that's yours. So that's Tom and Tilla. I'm like, I see a nice comfy couch. I'm like, that's mine, right? It's like, no, that's for my friend who's not here. But your friend's not. Your friend's physically not here. It's like, no, but he will be. I'm like, oh, so where am I sleeping? In the closet. Yeah, funny. Okay, seriously, where am I sleeping? Walk-in closet. And honest to God, I slept in the walk-in closet for San Diego Comic-Con that year. And the next day, I woke up in my boxers and went to make coffee, and I realized that the condo living room window it was on ground floor, stared directly into Starbucks, where people were drinking and lining up for their coffee. So that was a nice way to wake up. I didn't eat the coffee too much after that. And that's right about when Josh came in through the door with his giant nerd backpack. And it's like, hi, I'm Josh. I was like, hi, I'm Howard. I guess you're Tom's friend. And Tom came out and we all introduced each other. And then Josh asked me what I did. I'm like, oh, I do a stupid book called After the Cape. Wait. And then he dropped his backpack and started rifling through it and whipped out a copy of, it was the first issue. It was the first issue After the Cape.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we met. It's sort of like, this. I'm like, oh my God, why do you have that crap? But that's how we met, was there. But then the story becomes crazy. I mean, that was one of the most craziest convention experiences I ever had in my life. I still remember it, because of that. I mean, I was at the Image booth promoting After the Cape and helping out with the booth, obviously. And then I was trying to hook up with Josh for a lunch one day, because I thought I had a lunch schedule. Like I thought I had lunch this one day.
Yeah.
And apparently I didn't. But I couldn't. For some reason, I couldn't text him. I was using a Canadian phone. I was just roaming, so I don't know why I couldn't text him. And I felt bad, and I was like, I left him on the con floor waiting for me, not getting to eat. And then Josh can tell the rest of the story what happened to him until I saw him again hours and hours later.
Yeah, I went to San Diego 2 years in a row, and I loved it. And I would go back, except I don't want to go stand in line. Like, we're all spoiled now if you're a creator. Like, once you're behind that door, you're like, God, I don't want to go stand in line for 6 hours anymore. But but San Diego's great. And the thing at San Diego is if you're doing something, you're missing 3 other amazing things. Like if you're at a world premiere screening, you're missing a panel. If you're at an amazing Sarah Silverman panel, you're missing a Guillermo del Toro panel. Like you can't do everything that's there. So I remember like couldn't find Howard, and I think poor Howard was more upset than I was. I think I was like, oh, I'm sure he has an excuse. He's probably doing something. And one of the things I wanted to do was drop by the heavy metal booth, because at the time that was Kevin Eastman and Simon Beasley were doing a bunch of stuff there. I think Kevin Eastman was the publisher or the editor in chief. He was something there at the time. So I went over. There was a lovely person running the booth, and I asked if Kevin and Simon were around, and they were not. They were off doing something else. And then I see someone walk up who just looks like Lobo. This big guy with a mess of hair, wearing sunglasses. All he needed was white face paint and a couple of dashes over his eyes, and he would have looked like Lobo. He was clearly hungover, and I went to say hello, and he asked me. He grumbled if I wanted to go for a smoke, and I laughed and I said, "Sir, I never wish more in my life that I was a smoker, because I am not, but I will go and watch you smoke." So went outside with him, and he was just the king. Like that 5-minute walk to get outside, it was hugs and shaking hands and saying hi to old friends and everybody, like people who worked at the con, dealers, everybody knew Bees. So we went outside, chatted while he had a smoke, and he's like, "Oh, I want to go for a drink." And I wish I could remember what time it was, but I think it was like 11:30, I think, And there was a hotel bar. So he's like, "Oh, can I buy you a drink?" And like, I just met this guy, and and I said again, because I'm square, I was like, "No, I don't drink, but I will go with you." And good on him. He thought that was really cool. Like, for a big, crazy party animal drunk guy, he thought that was cool. So then I found myself for a genuine 2 hours at the hotel bar having a conversation with Simon Beasley, ranging from living in Canada, living in the UK. I happened to have a Ramon shirt on, so we talked about that for a while. Just everything. And then he saw that I had my big nerd backpack on, and I remember because he called it, the British way, he called it a rucksack. And he said, "Hey mate, can I smuggle in some drinks in your rucksack back into the con?" So it's like, a grown man asking his younger grown man fan to sneak beer into the convention for him. And I was like, sure. So there was a little like corner store there in the bar, or in the hotel. He bought a 6-pack, put it in my backpack. We went back in, and he sat down, took the beer out, and he's like drinking a beer sitting in San Diego Comic-Con. And I just wanted to like buy a book off him, get it autographed, that kind of thing. And if anyone has ever dealt with conventions at all, they know usually it's not the celebrity, it's the handler that keeps you from having fun. And so Simon looked over his shoulder, looking to see if anybody would see this. And I think the statute of limitations has passed, so he won't get in trouble now, because it's like over a decade ago. He grabbed the biggest stack of books and stole them from Heavy Metal, put them on the table, and he said, "Here you go, mate. Take these. Thanks for hanging out this morning." And so he gave me like 10 Heavy Metal books. He took one, and I was, at the time I was collecting sketches, so he drew this awesome little Lobo sketch for me. He took one book, signed it to me, and I had said jokingly, "Oh, my friend stood me up for lunch, and so that's why I could join you today." And he said, "What's your friend's name?" And I said, "Howard." And he took one book, and he wrote in something like "Howard, F you, loves Simon." And so, yes, I missed hanging out with Howard for a bit, but I got this nerd adventure of a lifetime by just being in the right place at the right time at San Diego Comic-Con. And that was just one adventure. Like I have a dozen stories like that from that year. Like, it's so much fun going there.
Before we continue, before I get Howard's side of the story, Josh, I'm going to ask, why were you at San Diego Comic-Con? Were you promoting something there, or?
So I've been there twice. The first year was at the very last minute. They informed me that a short film that I wrote and directed was going to be part of their little mini film fest they have. And then if I wanted to go, I was welcome to come, and they were going to give me a badge and all this kind of stuff. So, San Diego, it's impossible to find somewhere to stay. And in the years since then, from what I understand, like Howard and I know people who are like pretty big shot nerd comic artists and stuff who don't go back because they find it so frustrating, because you got to stay in a hotel like a 45-minute drive away, and it's hard to get a flight. And there's stuff like, if you have friends coming, it's a draw. So say if the three of us were going and we had a friend who had a pass, they might be like, Jason, you get a 3-day pass. Howard, you get a 4-day pass, and Josh, you get a 1-day pass. Like,
Yeah.
so it's hard to plan a vacation with friends to it now. So,
Yes.
but way back then, it was a little bit easier. So basically, in the 11th hour, I knew Tom was going. If I remember correctly, he was working for Mad Magazine at the time, so he was there on the Warner Brothers dime. And I just said to him, and I beat Howard to the punch by like 6 hours, I think. But I was like, "Do you have a couch I could sleep on? Because I got nowhere to stay, and I would really love to go for this experience."
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "Sure." And so what I guess was supposed to be Howard and Attila in a hotel room
Yes.
then became the four of us.
Mm-hmm.
So the silver lining was it made the hotel room cost a quarter of a single occupancy.
Mm-hmm.
But so that's why I was there for a little no budget short film that I directed. Got into their film festival.
Before we continue, what was the name of your short film, and is it online anywhere or?
It's around, yeah. It's called Thursday, and it's the day is the title's just supposed to be like, oh, it's just another normal day.
Mm-hmm.
But what it is somebody wakes up and realizes that everybody's disappeared and we don't know why. So it's this little story of a fun behind the scenes story of like how we just had to like be up before dawn and like
Mm-hmm.
walked around Ottawa before stuff started happening to get all these great shots of like that. And so it's a bit of like a horror movie mystery of like where'd everybody go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a little like 10-minute thing but it got into San Diego, and they just have like a little mini festival that has like a handful of features and a handful of shorts. And so yeah, so that was my way to get there, was by doing that little short film.
That's pretty cool. All right, Howard, your flip side. I know there's a little more to this story of you meeting Josh.
Yeah, well, so I was still at the booth. Oh my God, I remember I missed lunch. I remember that. And then Josh came over.
Mm-hmm.
He sort of, it wasn't like he was mad, but I felt like he was kind of mad. He stormed over and he just handed me a heavy metal. No, it was basically a sketchbook, art book. And I was like, what the hell's going on? Like, I thought he was going to be mad. I thought he was going to like just tell me off, which is totally, absolutely, I was ready for it. And I'm like, and he's like, here. And like, so I looked at it, and he was already walking away when I opened the book, and I saw that, Simon Bisley wrote down, Howard, F you, love Simon Bisley. I was like, love Biz. And I'm like, and I had to ask him the story, which he told you guys about. And I was like, oh man, I want to meet Biz too. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously Kevin Eastman because of TMNT, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I may or may not have skipped some of my hours of signing to go do that the next day, possibly, because it was along the way to the booth, but maybe I didn't make it on time.
Mm-hmm.
So I did end up talking to Kevin Eastman first, and it was like, I don't know, I kind of didn't want to nerd out, but I nerded out because he asked me what I wrote.
Mm-hmm.
He saw my badge, and I told him. Like, I kid you not, he took out a small pad of paper, like,
Mm-hmm.
and like an old school, and he wrote down my name and the title, like, after the cape. I'm like,
Nice.
is he really going to? He asked me, do you have any copies that I can buy? I'm like, actually, we're sold out. I was like, that's great. I'm like, not now. I want to give it to you. This is not great. This is the worst right now. So we talked, and I got an awesome sketch from him. It was amazing. It was an amazing time to spend with him. And then obviously fans came up to take photos. And at that time, I asked him, so is Biz going to be around? And he's like, yeah, he'll be here. He'll be here soon. He was supposed to be here probably 3 hours ago. I'm like, oh,
Sorry.
okay. So, then for whatever reason, he showed up like right after we said that. So I was talking to Biz, getting a sketch and talking about stuff. And then he asked me what I wanted. I'm like, oh, Lobo. I was like, and he did not take his eyes off me, and he drew Lobo without looking. He only looked down when he had to sign it. So it's sort of like, how did he do that? I know you're totally hammered, but this is really impressive. And then he asked me my name, and I'm like, oh, I'm Howard. He's like, I'm Josh's Howard. And that's the moment he he was wearing sunglasses. He looked up his sunglasses and like, fuck you. And I was like, yep, I deserve that. I'm gonna go now. And then that's how I exited that. But it was crazy because that night when the con was almost was closing down, I wanted to buy a ray gun.
Oh.
This ray gun from Weta Studios. Brain farted the guy who designed it. I'm so sorry. I remember it's Greg something. I'm such an ass. But I wanted to buy that, so I went to go buy that, and it was near the end of the day that day, and I was talking to their receptionist slash greeter for a while so I can get to buy that. I told him, can you reserve one at the end of the day? Because there's no way I can buy it during the con because I'm working the con. So that was the reason why I was talking to her. And then somebody started walking by, and she just literally jumped out of her table with, for some reason, a box of chocolate cupcakes with gummy worms sticking out of them. Mm-hmm. It's like, come with me. I'm like, okay. So, which is, you know, I was like the most weird, bizarre thing. So we ran up to a certain actress. So that was Rosalia Dawson, and she's like talking to her, asking if she could take a photo with her, and she gave her one of those cupcakes. So she asked me, the reason why she asked me to join her was to help take a photo of them. So it's like, not be part of the group, just take a photo. Yeah. I'm like, oh, I can do that.
Yeah.
So I did that, and then my brain's like, if you don't ask it now, you know, when the hell are you going to ask it? So I literally asked, you know, very politely if I could take a photo too, and she said sure. So I have a photo. Because of that, she's holding this. That's why people ask, why is she holding a chocolate cupcake with a gummy worm on it? And that's the reason why in the photo I had with her is that she's holding a cupcake with gummy worms sticking out of it. Right? It's just the funniest thing. And I didn't clue into me what happened that moment, because I just did it because I was there. You know, for that split second of buying. I was literally purchasing a geek thing for myself, and then that happened. And as I was walking back to the condo, I didn't dawn on me. I was like, okay, because it's like San Diego, it's a lot of things happening at the same time. It was only when I think it was you actually, Josh, that asked me, it's like, what you do anything fun today besides, you know, stay behind the image booth? I'm like, yeah. Oh my god, I had a photo with some, you know, I'm like, I have my phone out, like there. It's like, what the hell? When did this happen? Just a moment ago. Like, because you're like trying to, you know, you brief your own brain to go, did that just happen? Because, you know, in the afternoon, I was like talking to Kevin Eastman and seriously, like, and all this crap happened, and then this. It's like all one day. I'm like, my god, this is crazy. There's like 2 more days or 3 more days of this. This is nuts. So we learned that we were big geeks because of that, because we were like talking about our day and how we didn't connect, and we sort of figured out that we were on the same page in a lot of things that we liked, and there's a lot of things that we did know about each other that we were still cool with, which is actually nice.
There was like one day at San Diego, and I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this correctly, but in one day I saw Bruce Campbell panel, and they got to briefly meet Bruce Campbell and shake his hand. Went to a Sarah Silverman panel where they did a live reading of one of their episodes of the script, and Zach Galifianakis was there, and Sarah Silverman, and Brian Posehn, the whole cast. Went to a screening with a live audio commentary from Ray Harryhausen, where he talked all about making monsters. You know, met Ben Enlund and drew me a sketch of the Tick yelling "Oh Canada." Like that was one day. Like one day, I did like, you know, 6 months worth of geek pride accomplishments. So it's super fun. It's like everybody's there. There's so much to do. So yeah, if you can manage it, it's highly recommended to do it at least once.
Before we start moving on, Josh, I have to ask you this because I don't want to pass this up. You met Bruce Campbell. You shook his hand. I mean, how did that come about? I mean,
well, this is how long ago this was, but they were plugging the DVD release of Briscoe County Jr.
Yes.
Yeah, and so which was from the 2 guys who went on to produce Lost. So their follow-up show was much more successful because Briscoe County Jr. was on for like 1 season. Nobody watched it. Got canceled, you know.
And it was a very good show. I loved it. Yeah.
Oh, super. Yeah, me too. So I basically went to that panel, saw him do his Q&A, and then the host said, oh, so Bruce has a little bit of time. He's got like half an hour to do autographs, and he'll be doing it at, you know, this location. And like full-on Ferris Bueller style, before the host finished his sentence, I and a few other people ran from the room.
Sorry.
And
Yes.
it was like the San Diego Comic-Con is big. Like if you're standing outside, it's blocks long. So I was basically as far away as I could be. And so I ran like down escalators, hopping over turnstiles, the whole thing. And I got there, and when I got there, they have these lovely volunteers, and if you're the last person in line, they give you a word balloon that says, "I'm the last in line."
Oh, okay.
Because it's just the harsh reality of they have to put a stop to things.
Yes.
If not, Bruce would be there for 12 hours autographing, and he has to go get on a plane. And they don't want to make anybody the bad guy, but they do a math, and they say, like, okay, that's 75 people in line, that's it. So I was the second last person in line. And then people are in denial because they keep lining up. And volunteers are like, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it. So I got to get to the front of the line, shake his hand, have a very lovely 90-second conversation. He autographed my Bruce Campbell autobiography and autographed a wedding card for my friend who is a super Bruce Campbell nerd. And I said, if you can't give 2 autographs, I understand. Just do the one for my friend, and you don't got to write anything personal. But can you just? This is his wedding card gift, and he just put a little like congratulations from Bruce, and it blew the mind of my friend. It made me a nerd hero. So I met him for like 90 seconds. He was a great guy, and I had the old joke of I got to back when we still shook hands with each other. I shook his hand and did the old like I will never wash this hand again. And he was great to all his fans. He was autographing and taking pictures and doing all that stuff. So, yeah.
But that's so cool that you got that for your friend.
Yeah,
Oh
that was
He must have like framed it and everything, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, guys. I'm sorry. So I'm gonna continue. So both of you guys met. All right, we're gonna start talking about damn cursed children. Now, I'm gonna start off. Basically, what's the sales pitch for this story? Because in case one of our listeners, has no idea what the story's about, or what's the sales pitch for this story?
So on do it, or you do it?
I can do it. On a seemingly normal day, we see a daycare teacher and her group of students. She hears a strange sound outside and looks out to see a world gone mad, where all the children have become rampaging little monsters. And she looks over her shoulder, and the group of children in her classroom have also become terrifying little monsters. So that's our quick introduction. And then throughout the story, we follow a group of strangers who get together to try to survive in this city gone insane. And they get hints of maybe it's bigger than that even.
Okay. Howard, do you want to add anything to that?
Well, sure.
Yeah.
Pretty much, it's pretty solid there, but it is a world that finds itself in this insane situation with children attacking people and beating them. And the focus of the story isn't about the actual gruesome act of it, though it's in there. It's about the normal people trying to figure out what to do. And to not be one of the victims. So it's not like there's a scientist or a doctor who's going to like instantly know what to do, or a specialist is going to go, we're going to do A, B, and C and get out of Dodge. It's basically, imagine you or me just being in that middle of that situation. What's the first thing you would do? Some people would scream and freak out. Some people would freeze up and not do anything. So we're looking at that as the driving force for their story. So, but at the same time, we have a bit of homages here and there scattered throughout. Definitely some dark, very, very dark black humor in there for sure. For any of those who read it, probably would understand, because a lot of people have asked us, is this supposed to be funny? Because I find it funny, but it's also kind of, I feel bad about laughing at what I see here. And like, that's the point. Is it supposed to be funny? Is it supposed to be funny for you? And if it is funny, makes you a bad person or not? So for you to find out if that's the case or what I'm talking about, definitely, pick up at least the first issue and find out.
Okay. Now, how long, can you guys talk about the history of like how long, did you guys? How long did it take to get this book made? Because because one of the interviews that I've heard, like I'm going to try to pronounce. Hopefully, I got the name of the show correctly. Nerds of Color, and I think you guys did the interview back in November. Because if someone reads issue number 1, they're going to go, "Oh, you guys wrote this during the pandemic." Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I think if somebody picks out number 1 from like a 50-cent bin in 20 years, they'll be like, "Oh, they wrote this in 2021." It's like, no, coincidental.
Yeah, we wrote this. Well, we wrote this. We got the ideas came out in about a decade ago.
About a decade ago.
About a decade ago was the idea.
Mm-hmm.
We've been working on it on and off for that period of time,
Mm-hmm.
and then I talked to Source Point Press at the last Fan Expo, so that was like 2 years ago.
Okay.
3 years ago. 3 years ago. It was 3 years ago. About it to pitch them Damn Cursed Children. So that was when things started to roll forward for it. So we actually wrote it and had everything done. The art was done like a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
So this is so if had we wrote this during the pandemic, we probably would have changed quite a bit actually of things, because we have real world situations that we can fall back on and to write off on as inspiration, but we didn't. We were like looking at things in the past to what we like from horror films to our own imaginations to build up this world. So, it's a lot of things that we wrote back then that came kind of like, it's like, oh, that's like a parallel of that's happening now. And it creeps us out because it's like, when I wrote that line, it was sort of like, this is what I would think would happen if the situation had gone to ape in hell, and there we are. That's literally what they sound like. Holy crap! So it feels for us, it's really weird because we always talk about it every so often that some of the lines we wrote, some scenes we wrote, are like that's exactly what pretty much what happened. Different context, of course, but it was like creepy as stuff. So yeah, a decade ago was when we started. I mean, the idea was there, and we already started working on it, 10 years ago. So. Not remotely close to being reflected in the pandemic today.
Can you guys tell me the origin of how you came up with the title, Damn Cursed Children?
I blame Josh for that. I was sick in bed. My kids were very young at the time, so they were in daycare, and they brought back the flu and the plague. God knows what it was, because it knocked me it knocked me down. I mean, I was actually in bed, and I was like, I don't know, things were coming out of every orifice kind of thing. And of course, Josh decided to call me. I don't think he called me to ask me how I was. He was calling me because he wanted to see if I was going to Fan Expo. So you can go, which is like the Toronto's biggest comic book geek convention. I wouldn't say comic book because it's like everything from sports, comics, and cosplay and what have you. So he asked me if he could come along and be my table mate, so he can come into the con and stuff. And I was like, sure, if I'm alive. And then he asked me, "Are you sick?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sick." He's like, "Are you still sick from like last week, or are you sick? There's just like a new sick." And I'm like, "I think it's both." I think it's like, "Where'd you get it from?" I think it's for my kids for sure. It's for my kids. And then Josh blurted out, "Yeah, you can say it."
Yeah, I just said "Damn Cursed Children," and if I get credit with coming up with the title, Howard gets credit for actually thinking it could be something. And we just kind of joked, like, he was like, "Oh, that's a good title for a comic." And I said, "Go do it." And he was like, "I'm too sick." So I think I put together like an idea and gave it to him, and then we just kept going back and forth with the magic of collaborating over the internet, of just emails and Facebook chats and everything. But it's now we have a real comic book, and it started just with a off the cuff joke because kids always make their parents sick.
Now, this question is for both of you guys. When you guys started Damn Cursed Children, and start thinking about, did you guys come up with like some type of Bible or guideline for the story? Such as, is it only the kids are infected? If the kids bite an adult, do they be, that sort of thing. Did you guys come up with any guidelines for the story?
We kind of did in a way, and a kind of not in a traditional way, because I mean, I do world building for like different industries and stuff. So it's a very, I wouldn't say formulaic writing, but you basically have a lot of check boxes that you got to, or tick boxes you got to, tick off, right? Or whatever check boxes. But we didn't really go that route. It became very organic because I'm working. When you write but if you write by yourself, you end up doing that because you need to go back to it and whatnot. But we're working with a co-writer like Josh, especially Josh, because he's very responsive. It's like you would ask a question of, how do we define this? Why is this happening? Why are we? Is this really what's going to happen in this world? This is what it, whatever it may be, and be it the kids and not. And he would respond, and then I would retort, and then we go back and forth, and then we go, okay, that's the idea. That's how we're going to define this aspect of this world. So we did build it. Did we build it in a very formulaic way, meaning through a chart or something? No, it was very organic. So it actually helped with the writing because we wanted to write it. I know I consciously wanted to write it so that the characters were as real as possible. So it's like, the 5 issues take place over the first few hours, I would say, of this coming to light. So the very first issue wasn't people going, I know what to do. I know what this is about. It's more like, what the F was was the reaction, and then you just build off on that. So creating and I used a world Bible in quotations organically, the way we did helped, I think, the way we wrote it as well. But do we know why? Do we define only the kids being like that? Yes. Did we talk about what would happen when they do bite people or not and stuff? Yeah, we did. We talked about a lot of the aspects, a lot of questions that we've been being asked. I'm getting asked a lot. I don't know about you, but I'm getting asked a lot on Twitter, privately, asking me questions about certain things that I don't want to spoil for people reading the book. But they're asking me straightforward questions, and I'm like, read the next 4 issues or 3 issues at this point. So I can't tell you.
People really want like a origin story all the time.
Yeah.
And for us, monsters need rules. So if you're writing a vampire story, depending on the vampire, you could be like, oh yeah, it is, crosses do affect him, or they don't. Or if you're a werewolf, you could have werewolf stories where silver bullets aren't part of the mythology.
Yes.
So for us, I laugh at myself. My biggest snob thing is people calling the kids zombies. And I don't think this spoils anything at all, but I jokingly stick my finger in the air and go, they're not zombies because they don't spread the virus. They don't come crawling out of the grave. They, it's a, not to use the word magical or anything, but like our story is just like, bam, this is happening.
Okay.
And I really like stuff like that. My big influence is Night of the Living Dead in that. Yeah. Like that movie's decades old. Everybody knows it. There's no origin story. There's no explanation of, it's because of a toxic waste leak, or it's magic, or a meteor flew over. Other zombie movies do explain stuff like that. Yeah. But Night of the Living Dead does not. And like a classic film like Creature from the Black Lagoon, you're just like, nope, they're just a creature in that lagoon. We don't know where he came from. And I just realized this a while ago doing a more recent interview, is Tremors. I love the movie Tremors. And that's a lighter film, but like nobody explains where that monster comes from. It's just there. And so Damn Cursed Children has a bit of that in it that I really like, is that the fun and the scare and of the story is more important. The cool characters and the horror movie moments. You don't need the origin. You just need this story. So that's something I always push for these kind of stories. Is just go. Just don't waste time.
Just go.
Don't waste time with like a whole issue of like, oh, and then somebody got bit by something, and so so that's our kind of story. I think in this sense is that it's the story elements are very important, but you maybe don't have to worry about the origin so much.
Okay. Now it kind of leads up to my next question is, your story, and I'm gonna just, and no spoilers or anything, but you know, is your 5 issue story, is there a social commentary to the story? And again, I'm making it clear to our listeners, I'm not referring to the current pandemic, such as like, how the Night of the Living Dead, it was supposed to have been like a political commentary about the 60s and so forth. Or is Damn Crushed Children just the fun story you guys just wanted to do?
Well, for me, because I'm not going to answer for Josh. Josh will obviously can answer for himself. But for me, are there messages in what portions that I wrote or edited? Possibly. I'm not going to answer straightforwardly. I'm going to be a little coy because to me, it's like art.
Yes.
Any kind of art form, you take it and interpret it the way you do because of your experiences, education, knowledge, and whatnot. For me personally, there were some things that I wanted to touch upon, which I did with the way I wrote. So things about children are obviously involved. Things about the relationship between children and adults definitely are involved. But I'm not going to go out and go, this is the A, B, and C's of why I did this, because that's, I think, takes away from the story from a lot of people. Can you imagine if, for whatever reason, one of the Renaissance artists was alive today, and it's like, I painted this because I was bored.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that sucks because all that emotions and feelings that you got from it is now, disconnected. To, I did it because I got paid. It could be like the worst, explanation on earth, right? To something very, very, deep but very personal. So there are some personal stuff for me, and some just things that I wanted to talk about or concerned about back then when I was writing it. But it's not like I hammered it in. You can ask them, I didn't go, this is why I'm doing it. I give hints in here to tones and themes I want to touch upon, which I got to do, which was a lot of fun. That's why I really enjoyed writing this. As for Josh, I don't know. What did you stick to something in that I don't know about?
No,
a little late now.
That's why we're a good odd couple, because Howard has in-depth thoughts like that, and I'm just like, oh, I just want a scene where a little monster kid gets hit in the head with a cup. I think I remember hearing about Spielberg and Lucas writing Raiders of the Lost Ark, and before they wrote it and had any characters, they were just like, we want a boulder scene, we want a biplane, we want a monkey, we want Egypt, all this kind of stuff. And I think that's kind of how I write these kind of fun adventure horror things is the beginning, middle, and end is important. And we totally have some really for what is fun. Like I said, I didn't want it to be a Walking Dead kind of thing.
Yes.
Clearly, there's nothing wrong with Walking Dead because it's a phenomenon that has sold millions of copies. But I wanted it to be as fun as horror could be while still being terrifying. So I just when going through, I was just like, I want this cool thing with a car. I want this cool thing where they're in a mall. I want this cool thing where they're in a graveyard. And I didn't realize this till a few interviews ago. Despite being super influenced by Bruce Campbell and loving Army of Darkness, and even maybe having a little tip of the hat to it in the series, there's no catchphrases in our book, which was, I will fully say, was not planned, but shows that we had kind of an idea of what we wanted to do. Is that there's no part where, and there's there's characters driving cars really fast and with guns and doing stuff like that, but not once does one of them say groovy. And that was not planned, but works so well. And now going forward, if we have another story to tell, we have that rule in our head now. We're like, yep, this isn't the kind of horror that has the catchphrases. It's a little bit more real world. So I think that's kind of a happy accident, but it fits well with our story.
Okay. Let me just ask an off the cuff question, because I sent you guys a list of questions. You guys writing stuff. How do you guys write? As a creative team, how do you guys work out who's going to write what, or how does that work? If you could explain that to our listeners, for you guys,
it's back and forth. It's just like it's so funny to think that if we were in some kind of alternate universe, like sitting in a room together, like in an office, in cubicles, how different it would be. But now it's like I'm in Ottawa, he's in Toronto. Our artist is very far away.
Yes.
Our publisher is in Michigan. So we're all over the place. And I said if we ever get one of those big hardcover expensive absolute editions that reprint like the scripts and everything,
yes,
our scripts are unreadable because between us we know what's going on and we have like a nice pristine like first draft, but then I'll go through and I'll go, Howard, I added some lines that are red, and then he'll go through and say like, oh, I crossed out a couple of paragraphs that are purple, and then it just keeps going and going, and then the script would get further and further out of format. So instead of looking like a pretty script that could be printed in a textbook, all it was different fonts and it was a mess. But we knew what was going on, and that's what's fun about independent as well, is that we didn't have to hand off the script and be done with it. Like we got to correct word balloons up to the 11th hour, and just really finicky stuff. Like I might go like, Howard, I think it would be better if they said, it's over there instead of it is over there, and just the tiniest little things. So yeah, so it's just, we worked over Facebook chat, we worked through email, we sent stuff back and forth. We were never once in the same room together with pens in hand writing on notepads. Like it was always over a very modern way of collaboration.
Yeah, I mean, when we worked out like the plot, and I used that in quotations because we actually moved away from it a bit too. When we started actual scripting and doing everything from final descriptions and dialogue, there were discussions of certain scenes that wouldn't be like, well, I deleted it all because it sucked. It was never that. It was more like, what do you think if we did this to push the scene further, or maybe we changed this to this? Would that be more of an impact? It was always a discussion.
Oh, okay.
Versus a nope. I wrote the scene. It's perfect. Hands off. It was never we never had one of those moments because I collaborated in different ways with, in different fields that I've touched upon, and that you can't do that. It's literally impossible. If you've worked in mobile games, any industry, I don't care if it's in creative or not, it's impossible to just go, it's mine, period. That's the way it's going to go from beginning to end. It never happens. So I'm very used to that. But at the same time, it was very great that we were able to talk it out and explain why. And then once we explained why to each other, it wasn't like, this is my reason why, because it's cool and because it's reflective of this or that or whatever, or connected to this or that. It was that because of that information, we were able to carry that theme or tone to another scene, because it was sort of like, okay, this character is going to be in another scene because we established this over here.
Yeah.
We can carry it over here and make it even more impactful. So that it became that. So when we start going through the color, I tried my best. I think I made a legend too. Color coding of the changes. It got to a point where I kind of gave up because I'm like, was it like the light blue or the dark blue for the newest change? And Josh was like, I don't remember. I remember just blue. I'm like, that doesn't help because we have light blue and dark blue now. So it became one of those, okay, from this point on, it's going to be green. And so we went out with the green. So it was really, as I said, very organic the way we wrote. And it was definitely not formulaic. It wasn't like, okay, I'm going to get scenes 1, 3, and 5, and you do 2, 4. It was never, ever that discussion, which, that's why it took us that long to do it. But it became a better script because of it. I mean, that's why there's a flow. I mean, I've seen people who try to divvy up a script where they like, we'll take this half and I'll take the other half. Yeah. You can literally see when the other writer is coming in.
Yes.
Because it's a different style altogether. So when you co-write, you want it to blend. So you honestly got to work it together for it to blend, because if not, it's going to stand out like a sore thumb. You'll know the differences in writing because everybody writes in a different style. So that's how we did it, and it's the best way to do it. I don't know. It worked for us, because I know if we were to do something else again together, hopefully, we would be so much faster. We definitely would have a straightforward legend of colors at the get-go. Like, we know what we would need to do to make it so that it would work much faster. And then poor Robin wouldn't have to, be crying when he looked at her script and trying to go, which one do I draw? Fuchsia or which one is it? So it would make the production would be much faster because we've learned how to work with each other through this process.
Now you touched upon Robin, your artist, and artist is Robin Simon Ng. So how did you guys?
How we meet him? Well, long ago, when After the Cape Volume 1 was done, I was asked if I wanted to do Volume 2, and it's like, obviously, I would love to do Volume 2 of After the Cape. So he was one of the artists I recruited online. I believe it was from DeviantArt, I think, or Pencil Jack. No, I think it should be DeviantArt. And he was one of the artists that caught my attention, and I contacted him. I mean, I posted ads up, and that's how I found my artists way back in the day. And everything was good. He sent samples in. Everybody at Image was like, "Yes, this is the one." I'm like, "Yay!" Because my first After the Cape original artist, Marco Rudy, you know, when before he finished after Volume 1. He contacted me. He's like, he was getting a job from Mark Waid to do something. I'm like, do it, go ahead.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I have another delay. I'm like, what is it? He's offering me, and you know, I think it was an exclusive contract at the time. I could be wrong. You have to don't quote me on that. But I was like, dude, do it. Obviously, I mean, if I was in the same boat, I would probably leave you, but maybe. But that's what happened. So we had to find a new artist for Volume 2. That was the reason. So. So I told Josh about Robin, like, this is when we were friends, obviously. I'm like, I got this amazing artist for Volume 2. It's going to be awesome. And then I think the same week, I'm like, he can't do it. And it's like, what do you do? I'm like, he had kids. He had a kid. So he's not doing it. So he bowed out of the project, but I kept in contact with him because I loved his art. And I so happened to be in Hong Kong at the same time he was in Hong Kong for a vacation. So I'm like, why don't we hook up and meet and just hang out for a bit, just to, you know, face to face, because at that time it was just, you know, way back in the day, we didn't have Facebook even. Holy crap. We had like basically the boards, like, the image boards and whatnot. So people were wondering why we didn't meet. That's, you know, or see video chats. That's what happened. So we met and we talked and we kind of hit it off. So I'm like, you know, definitely want to work with you. I don't know what it's going to be, but one day I'm going to throw you a script and you just tell me yay or nay, right? So after we got, I think issue 1 done, or issue 2. I think issue 1 was done. I threw it to Robin to see what he thought about it. And I remember his first reaction was, "So not superheroes?" I'm like, "No, no." It's like, "This is pretty dark." I'm like, "Yeah." Are you cool with it? Because I know you have very, very young children, and if you're not cool with it, that's okay. He's like, "Nope, I can do it." I'm like, "All right, I'll let Josh know, and then we'll get your contracts drafted up, and then we'll hit this thing, hit this ball, hit this thing, hit this thing rolling." And then that's what happened. He liked the idea enough to do it, and he started throwing art at us, and that's how he got involved, because I met him online in 2008, I think 2007, 2008. So, but I kept in contact all those years for him to be on part of this amazing project. I'm so happy that he is, because he is a phenomenal artist that people keep asking, "Where'd you find him?" I'm like, I found him back in the day when he had, threads and boards before Facebook, before Reddit. You're like, how old are you? But the thing is, I've known people for a long time, and the thing is, there were some artists that I met even back then that were emerging. They were like getting into it, but they weren't ready. I can sort of tell the art was ready or not, because the confidence in your line work, I can sort of see it, because even a fan can see that there's some nervousness in your line work. So there are artists that I've known from back then that are now working for Marvel and DC, that I'm like, back then, if you asked them, "You're going to be working for Marvel and DC," no one would believe it, because their artwork is so completely different than it is now. So Robin just kept on going and developing from what he did back then to now. So his art now is, phenomenal. So, but I saw the potential in him back then, that he can do it for sure. That's how he got involved. He said okay to it. Like I never like forced an artist to go, you must do this. You will draw this. But it's more like if you're not cool with the idea and the themes that we're doing, then don't do the book because then your heart won't be in it, right? So I'm glad that he said yes.
It was years back when, because like Howard said, it's like I think Robin more or less finished an issue, and then we had speed bumps trying to find publishers, or he had speed bumps because he was raising a family. But I remember just his character designs coming in and just being so blown away. And then in more recent years, when that second issue and third issue and fourth issue started rolling in, it was so great. And he brought a lot to it, like any good collaboration does, where every once in a while he would straight up find like an error. And I forget what it exactly was, but it was like, oh, we can't do this because the way we've designed the house, the car can't come out of the garage that way. But he had an idea to make it work. And we were like, and I think the key is you can't be precious. You can't be like, no, I want it to go that way. And so he had a great idea. Every once in a while we would get a page back, and this is, I think, common, is if it was like a 5-panel page, he would have added a 6th panel just with a reaction shot of one of the characters or a cutaway shot, and that would affect us shuffling around the word balloons a bit differently. But you just got to keep doing that. It really helps. Like, you can't be rigid. And whether that be on a script point of view, like I remember times where Howard would send back a rewrite and I'd go like, I love this, this, and this, but I don't think our character Ted would say that. And Howard would go, oh yeah. And we'd go back and forth and we'd fix it. And Howard has been such an amazing teammate on the book because his stuff works so well for the style that we were going for. And in the beginning, it wasn't planned as black and white, but it works so well as black and white. It looks like an old 1970s Marvel comic, I think, one of those old horror books. But but yeah, it's we're writing a comic book, so having a great artist attached is a definite plus to the equation.
I have a question from Drew. Do you guys send Robin full scripts?
Yes.
Or do you guys? Okay.
Yeah, we send him full scripts, and we also send him definitely too many references to things that we want. I don't know. It's weird because Robin's sort of like the not super nerd geek kind of artist who wants to be in comic books, which is kind of amazingly awesome for us. I mean, I love people like, wow, that's terrible. How can you talk to the person? There's more things. There's more things beyond comic books and geek stuff to talk about. But we would have to send him like visual references for like especially with the covers. We're sending him making movie posters to EC covers to everything. And I mean, between me and Josh, I think we send him like at least 50 between us, I think, or something like that. He got to the point where he wants to stop.
Yeah, we just got on a run because Howard and I had ideas, and Robin is the most non-nerd comic artist I've ever met. Like I'm sure he must have some nerddom in him, but we were sending him stuff about EC Comics and horror movie posters to tribute on the covers, and we would have little ideas of like I wanted a certain car in there and sent him reference for that, and he was always great at doing it. But I think he's really bringing his own style to the mix, and a few other folks have mentioned that either in reviews or on podcasts. It's clear that he's not like I am doing a Todd McFarlane horror style, or I'm doing a Terry Moore horror style. Like, he's doing his own thing, and I think that's a real fun new aspect to this horror story of ours.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's one of the things I love about working with artists who are like him, or for some reason isolated themselves from geekdom, because when they ask you about stuff, I remember him asking like, so this film, you sure you want me to do this, do this homage of this poster? Is that cool? I'm like, yes. And to try to explain why is not necessarily the easiest thing to do, but because he has confidence in our decision making, it's like, okay, I'll do it, and let's see how it goes. Because he also obviously sent his own ideas for covers and scenes and stuff like that. That I'm like, yep, we're doing it. I don't know where he pulled it from because I've never seen anything like that. That's why it's going to be in it. Done. So it was very nice to have that kind of thing, especially for this book. There are things that you need somebody who needs to know a bit of the history of certain things to be able to pull off certain things. But in this case, it was perfect. I didn't go out with a plan going, I must find an artist who's exactly like Robin in his knowledge about this part of nerd stuff. It wasn't. It was just so happened that I didn't know he didn't know, because I assumed that he would know. Because when he said, he was like, "Oh, this script looks good, I'll do it." I thought he must like horror. Great, we're in cloud nine. When he explained that he did, I was like, "What? Why are you doing this then?" So, because I remember him once, he said, "This is okay to do. Like, this is kind of dark with publishers like this." I'm like, "You're asking in. We're halfway in. we're committed now. You can't ask this now. You've already drawn tons of children being, so now?" So that's one where I'm like, wow, so you're not? And then the references came, and then he realized that between me and Josh, we liked a lot of weird shit. I guess. I don't want to be made him like see us in a different light. I'm pretty sure it did. But it was an amazing experience, like production wise. It was for me, it was funny, because I was like, I thought it'd be like, just do this kind of cover, boom. And when he's like, "But why?" I'm like, "What? Is he challenging my geek?" Like, at first I'm like, "Is he challenging my geek?" I'm like, "Okay, fine." I'm like, I don't want to respond with a geek answer, but then it was really being very honestly asking why. Really cute and awesome at the same time. So it came out that because of that, as Josh mentioned, the artwork inside interior pages is literally him. It's not him copying a scene from whatever, be it film or a comic book. He does obviously read comic books here and there, but he never copied his style, which I always loved about his art. He's never because so artists just they follow some style and then they bend it into their own thing. It happens all the time, right? Writers do the same thing, musicians do the same thing. Him, for some reason, I look at his art, I'm like, where's this coming from? Like, I literally, every time I look at his art, I'm like, where's this coming from? Because this is like, it's always like, where's your influences from? And you're trying to guess it out, but every time I look at his stuff, I'm like, I don't know yet. If there is, I haven't figured it out. So, and I love that. I love that the most about his artwork for this project. It's absolutely, like, for me, it's fun because of that. It surprised me every time we got a page in. I was like, "Oh, this is completely different from what I envisioned. This is a lot more dynamic. This is great." Things like that. So about the stake stuff. Yeah, it was the garage thing, because we wrote the scene with the house designed in a certain way, and the garage was situated in a different way. He's like, the car came out that way, and then he fixed it with a change of visuals of the scene and fixed it. He's a lot of him in it for sure. I mean, there's like scenes where we're like, this is what's happening to the children. This is what's gonna how we envision it. Then he would throw in a lot more horrific stuff. I'm like, oh, that's a lot way darker than what we wrote. And then he would ask, is this okay, or have I gone too far? I'm like, oh no, this is great. Just keep going. Go further. It's fine. there is no too much. So it's been definitely a great experience here working with him too.
Josh, this question is for you, because I'm going to slowly start kind of closing this up, because I know originally I told you guys we're going to do an hour interview, but this is great. This is great. So one last question about Damn Cursed Children. So it's for you, Josh. Any possibility of this becoming a short film?
Oh yeah, I don't think anybody with no money could do it. Of course, it's kind of, nowadays you can't help but have that dream of your project being picked up to become a TV series or a movie. The harsh reality is it's a series filled with terrible, terrible things happening to children.
Yes.
And so reading that in a comic is one thing. That in real life, like, it would involve, I think, like a lot of CG stunt children. It would be brutal. So you could do it. I don't think you could do it. And just like, especially say if you're doing a short film, that's like usually no budget, friends helping you out, doing it on the free. So even if you whittled it down to just being like one of the scenes from the story, it's still like the opening scene is a daycare with a dozen kids, and the kids are like leaping at a person, and they're being hit with things, and they're getting their arms stuck in the door.
Yeah.
They're there's a car crash with a kid eating a person.
Yeah.
So it's I think be very difficult for a low budget point of view.
Mm-hmm.
If you were doing a real big budget movie or a series, yeah, you could do whatever you want.
Yeah.
But that really is the line in the sand of it would be quite an undertaking to do it with just real actors on a low budget set with, fake blood and no special effects. It would be a little difficult, but bigger budget for sure.
Yeah. And then also too, like you added too, like in a comic book, it's cannibalistic kids. I mean, for us horror comic fans, we're like, wow, this is great. But trying to put that into the mass audience, half of them will be,
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There's a thing about drawings or even a novel versus the big screen versus TV. Like there's a line there that when it becomes real, sometimes it's too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we won't say no. Our doors are open for offers.
I'm ready to sell out. I'm ready.
Oh yeah. Yes, we would definitely entertain any offers.
All right, so sorry, I'm gonna keep continuing on. So already Damn Cursed Children is a 5-issue series. Issue number 3 is gonna come out at the end of this month, March 1st. You guys have been working, basically you guys have been friends basically since 2006, 2007?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yep.
So now I'm looking at the future, and if you guys can't say anything, that's no problem. Or if you guys say I can't talk about, that's fine. So for you guys as a writing team, what's next for you guys?
Sleep. I only wish. As a team, I think we definitely talked about what can be done in this universe that we started at Source Prime Press. So we're obviously juggling some ideas back and forth as we promote, because without fans, honestly, without the amazing fans that we've built up and who continue to grow, and hopefully continually grow as well, onward and onward, it gives us, some fuel to expand this world that we built up, and we would love to. And we have ideas that we've been throwing around that I think are very exciting right now. That'd be great if we could do that. And if it's not more Damn Cursed Children, in the near future, it might be another project. We don't know, because we like working with each other a lot. I mean, it was very, as I said, very easy, very natural. I know because we were Canadian or something. It was very simple. So it was like, because if you asked me, like, at any time, like, were you stressed working with John? Like, never. It was more like I felt kind of guilty sometimes. I'm a little late in, giving him something. So it was never like, oh my God, I have to like talk to him about this. So, like, it was never that. It was sort of like, it was very like easygoing and natural. So I can't see why we wouldn't do other things together, for sure. But hopefully that we could. I mean, honestly, hopefully we get to expand Damn Cursed Children's universe further, because there's so much potential for story. If you ask me, I mean, what we started was, the cusp of a lot of ideas that we put in the drawer per se, that we want to pull out, and then go boom, expand them out for everybody to jump into as well.
Yeah, I've been very careful about not saying anything because nothing's official. But I do joke that Howard's been very, very busy the last little while with some other projects on the go. And I said, but we do have a shared folder called Damn Cursed Children, and I have been filling it with ideas and sending it to him. So there's ideas floating around for sure.
Okay. All right. Let's see. This question is from Drew. It's for both of you guys. Where do you see the comic industry going in 2021?
Whoa, that is crazy. With all the pivots, and I know people hate that word, but we'll use that word. All the pivots that we've seen for the last year from the different publishers, and that includes like the big guys too, which is like, was shocking to a lot of people. It's going to change a lot of things, I think, in the near future, because of how it affected the shops, And then in turn, how it affects publishers, how because it's all related. This industry is it's a chain, so we're all connected to each other. So what we do as creators, we send it to the publisher, and the publisher has to work with, Diamond as a distributor, and then they work with the shops and stuff. So if any point along those lines something doesn't work well, and especially what's happening outside, it changed a lot of things with lockdowns and restrictions of smaller businesses. I think it's going to be digital might be pushed a little further because it's just easier to connect with people who can get it anytime.
Yes.
There's definitely a shift to having things available through online markets, like things like Amazon and stuff like that. I think that's definitely one because it's a direct, from them to your door, so you don't have to come out. If you can't come out, maybe you're in a city that you're still in lockdown. Yeah. We were just in lockdown until today. So I think that's the shift because it's the short pivot, if you ask me. For long term, I don't know if that would be the way to go because, like any industry like this, like any industry that involves a fan base with people who like to connect with each other. The reason why we have conventions and comic book shops are still around today because people like hanging out with each other who like to have the same interests. No joke, right? So how can you do that if you live isolated where you don't go online except for going and ordering things from a place like Amazon? You have that disconnect from that part of that geekdom. Geekdom is people, and without us connecting, then it dies, right? That's the honest truth. So for short term, I see it shifting so that businesses can survive this in any way they can. Hopefully, more shops can send their stuff to delivery, hopefully. I don't know how that would work out for them. But at the end of the day, I see it going back to sort of the old ways of dealing with it. So people coming to the shops and doing that, whatnot. But with the added, Sports Parents just did it themselves. They signed a deal with Simon & Schuster to be in bookstores.
Oh, okay.
So, for me to say that in bookstores, physically brick and mortar stores, right?
Yeah.
So there's an avenue there where it's beyond the comic book shops, but it's still stores, right? And yes, of course, that's going to also be online as well, but we're still looking at stores because that's how we connect. When you walk in a comic book shop, you don't just go in and grab your stuff and leave.
Yeah.
Have you ever not said anything? Say this is, get my profile and drop down a couple bills and then leave. Never do that. You hang out, talk, and discuss, and revel in the stories that you just read or issues that you read because that's part of it. So without that, then it becomes a really weird industry to me because imagine going to a movie theater, coming out and not talking to anyone about the movie. You can't. That's not natural, right?
Yeah.
Same thing for comic books. We have to have that human connection. So it's a short way for the short spit, definitely online and looking into preparing ourselves for more wider market in brick and mortar. And then when things get back to better, and I know it will get better, we'll go back to being more normal in our ways of buying comic books and hanging out. That's my thoughts at least. And for Josh,
I think that the smart comic book stores, and this is nothing brand new. It's like the last few years doing this kind of stuff of just making that extra effort of having magic card nights, having Dungeons and Dragons nights, something to bring in nerds who are also buying stuff, buying a D&D book or buying dice or buying magic cards. So doing that, doing really spectacular free comic book days, having people in for guest signings, doing online Facebook auctions where they find a bunch of stuff and put it online just for publicity and to get it out there. So you see comic stores now, it's, they have to make that extra effort because I love comic stores and I love comic books, but at the same time, I admit that I'm in my 5th year of my wife getting me Marvel Unlimited as a birthday gift. And I am crazy addicted to it. And I love it. But I'm reading a lot of stuff on there, like going through old, early Spider-Man, early Fantastic Four, it just like they do a very, very good job of curating it. So at Halloween they'll put up stuff. At Valentine's Day they'll put up stuff. They'll have creators put on their favorite list. So I can be addicted to that as the modern way to read a comic book, but still love comic book stores.
Yes.
But comic stores have to deal with that. That's the reality.
Mm-hmm.
So whether that be people who buy variant covers, whether that be people who want to buy statues or T-shirts, like there is a way for a store to survive during digital because yeah, like straight up, I love Marvel Unlimited. I will very likely get a subscription to the DC thing when that becomes available in Canada in a couple months. And like, there's a thing called Humble Bundle that started with video games.
Yeah.
And my friend introduced that to me because he was getting video games off it, and I love it because you'll go on and for $20 get like $500 in Archie comics or $500 in IDW comics, and a chunk of the money goes to charity, a chunk goes to the publisher, and a chunk goes to Humble Bundle, and you get a stack of digital comics. So between Marvel Unlimited and that and the library, I get a lot of comics not from a comic book store. So they got to deal with that. But I think they can survive just by going that extra mile. And maybe they're selling fewer comic books than ever, but they'll have a very loyal batch who are buying comic books, and then a loyal batch who are buying Star Wars action figures, and a loyal batch who are buying Dungeons and Dragons books, and that's how they get by. And so I think they can survive for sure, but I don't think it's ever going to go back to the good old days of the 90s or anything. But they can do it. I think I've seen locally that the stores can do it, so it's different, but they'll survive.
Josh, I have a question for you. Where do you see the movie industry going in 2021? Because you work in a movie theater.
Yeah, it's very there's a big panic, and I don't think there's a reason to panic. The cinemas like ours that do survive are gonna survive. Sadly, that we mentioned this last night, as we speak. Last night, the other single screen cinema in Ottawa closed down. So, like, very sad. Like, there was all this social media, and we were saying nice things about them, and there's always a hope that someone will revive them. But as we speak now, we're the last man standing, and so we survive because we have great patrons. We survive because we do all kinds of special events, and we get stuff that the multiplexes don't. But before the first round of lockdown back in March 2020, we were in a 17-week run of Parasite, which could have become 24 weeks. And we were getting like 200 people on a Wednesday, which is unusual. So, and even during these lockdown times with our limitations, we were having sellout shows of Christmas-type movies over the holidays. Disney allowed Empire Strikes Back out of the vault, and we were doing great with that. So there's a sign that people will come back. And maybe a city sadly can't support 20 independent cinemas like they did back in the 70s and 60s, but the Mayfair will survive because we got great patrons and strangely have an association with digital and with streaming services that you would think would be our enemy. But in the past couple of years, we don't need 5,000 people in the cinema. We need 50. We need 100. So we screened stuff like The Irishman and Roma and Mank while they were on Netflix at the exact same time, and Netflix sending us posters and doing publicity, and we did well with it because there's always going to be someone in a town, the same way that you want to go to a restaurant or go see a band play or go to an art gallery, you want to go to a movie. And so that's what's going to make us survive. Sadly, we will be the minority. Like every major city might have one Mayfair, whereas you look back in the 50s and there'd be 20 of these type of cinemas. So it's kind of embracing the digital era and just screening all kinds of stuff and doing special events. We haven't been able to do Rocky Horror since before COVID times because it involves screaming and touching each other and throwing things, and you can't do that right now. So that'll come back. What's really fun, this weird silver lining, is that 2022 is our 90th anniversary. So if we come out of the holiday season and we're a bunch more steps back towards normalcy, and we can cross promote that and be like, we're back. Rocky Horror's back. Saturday morning cartoons are back. The Room is back. We can have more than 50 people in the cinema. That's going to be a fun thing. So that's what we're looking forward to, hopefully. But I think I think multiplexes are in more danger than we are, because I think they're really having the fight of, if Warner Brothers comes to us and says, we're going to have Suicide Squad on, or Batman on, or Kong versus Godzilla on, but we'll give it to you for a weekend, or we'll give it to you for 5 days, but it's going to be on TV at the same time.
Yes.
We'll take it, because there's enough cinema fans in town who will come see something like that for 3 or 4 days.
Yes.
Whereas the multiplex wants to show it for like 3 months. So I think they're in more of a weird position now than we are, because if they come to us and say, hey, do you want to play Batman for 3 days?
Yeah.
We'll be like, yeah, sure, because we know there's enough fans. There's not enough fans in town for that to be like 10,000 people, but there's probably, 300 people who want to come see Batman on the big screen. So it's an interesting time for everybody, for books, for music, for movies, for comics. It's a very interesting time to see what the next year will bring for people getting back to enjoying pop culture.
2 more questions before I wrap it up. Any shout-outs to your local comic shops?
Great question. Great thing to do. So I would alienate some people, and then I'll feel bad. But I know a few shops that are in and out of town. But Heroes World, for sure, in Markham have been very supportive. They were the first podcast we did, actually. Wow, kind of weird ass to think about that just now. And they sold out of Damn Cursed Children each time for issue 1 and 2. So yay! So shout out to them for being awesome. Great store. They don't just do comic books. Actually, they do model kits and do a lot of tabletop games as well. And any kind of card game you can think of, they probably sell as well. So they've been around forever. Beautiful, and the owners are pretty awesome. They've been around forever. So shout out to those guys. They become my new local shop. That's one of the closest shops that I like. If you ask, that I go to. Well, did go to, I guess, until things went like this. So yeah, shout out to them for sure for the support. And anybody that who's ordered our book, I'm not going to just shout out to the locals, but anyone who took a chance with our book, thank you so much. I mean, I've tried to find you guys and to promote them on my social media. So if it's any shop that I have not contacted about having Damn Cursed Children, ping both Josh and myself so that we can tell the world about it, so they can go to your shop and buy stuff and support you guys. So not just local, but any city's local shops. I'm all happy for you guys to be around, and stick around, please, because I love you guys.
I get my comics delivered by a great local non-comic store, and that just kind of happened because I got busy and I still wanted to get comic books, but they're called Dark Age, and have been crazy supportive, have been getting the word out. And I didn't even tell Howard this yet, but when he dropped off my books on the weekend, he said, oh, you picked up 5 new people getting Damn Cursed Children on their pull list. So we got 5 new people in Ottawa getting that. And then there's a store called the Comic Book Shop here in town, and they've been great forever. They're really good about supporting local and having people in doing signings and stuff. And it's such a thrill when they take a picture of, like, here's what's this week, and they put all the books. And just, it's the biggest nerd thrill to see, like, Damn Cursed Children, and, like, to its left is Daredevil, and right above it is Captain Marvel. I can't even. It's just the best. I've talked with people much more successful than I am about this, and they say the exact same thing. Like, no matter how far you get in, you see your book on the shelf beside other things, and you're like, oh wow, if I was 5 and I saw this, it would blow my mind. And there's a fantastic store out in Halifax, so not local to me, but I found it because my wife's from out east, and they're so great. Strange Adventures, and same thing. Like they'll publish, like, here's our new independent books this week, and I just get such a thrill knowing that it's on the shelves in Halifax. And so, yeah, every time a store does that, it's so great, and I love seeing that it's on like the recommendation shelf at a store, or they tweet out their top 3 of the week, and it's so funny when it's like, a Star Wars book and Daredevil and Us. Yeah. Like, I just love that. So it's very, very flattering.
All right, the last question again, if you guys can promote your social media platforms again.
Sure. For all of them, in case you miss out when I say them, or misquote myself, dear Lord, You can go to my blog at howard-wong.blogspot.com. They're listed there. So for Instagram, it's at the real Howard Wong. Twitter would be Howard Wong and the number 1, so Howard Wong 1. Facebook is the same thing, Howard Wong 1. And for Josh,
my Instagram is batturtle_Mayfair because Bat Turtle was taken. Somebody beat me to it. And then I'm on there mostly as the Mayfair social media guy. So you can find me at Mayfair Theater, and where we just have all kinds of cool stuff. Mayfair is on Facebook. I'm on Facebook. You can find me on there as well. And then I host a weekly Mayfair Theater podcast that we talk about movies and the cinema, and just one of those podcasts where often we'll talk about other things for 25 minutes and then at the end remember to talk about the movies. And we recently passed 300 episodes and have lots of loyal listeners all over the place. So you can hear me on there asking people to buy the comic as well on a weekly basis.
Howard and Josh, thank you very much for your time. I think our interview is like about an hour and 45 minutes. Just, literally, thank you very much for your time today. Again, guys, to our listeners, Damn Cursed Children number 3 from Source Point Press comes out on March 31st. Until next time, guys, aloha.
Thank you so much for having us, man. Take care.
That was my interview with Howard Wong and Josh Stafford. Their book, Damn Cursed Children number 2, is currently in stores right now. Issue number 3 comes out on March 31st. Now, if you are a big horror fan, I encourage you to, check out this limited series. It's pretty wild. It really is. And I really love it. Now, this is part of the closing bumper. I start giving out my big mahalos, my big thank yous to people that made this episode possible. The first big mahalo goes out to Josh Werner, the Chief Creative Officer of Source Point Press. Josh Werner was the one that arranged it for me, Howard, and Josh Stafford, to do the interview. So Josh Werner, thank you very much. My next big mahalo goes out to Howard and Josh Stafford, for their time, to do this interview. When I was in contact with Howard and Josh Stafford through email, I basically told them, hey, the interview is only going to be an hour long. As you guys know, it went more for an hour. So I'm just saying, Howard and Josh, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much. And it was so awesome to talk to you guys about, all these all these nerdy stuff, the stuff that we love, about conventions and comics and so forth. So thank you very much. I also want to give a big mahalo to my Ohioan brother Drew for doing the heavy lifting behind the scenes. Drew is the one that is behind the scenes that does all the puts together these episodes. So just Drew, thank you very much. Thank you very much. And also to Drew, thank you very much for letting me contribute to your podcast. Now, if you are a new listener, please check out new episodes of the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. New episodes come out every Saturday and is hosted by my Ohioan brothers, Kyle and Drew. And finally, the big mahalo goes out to you, the listeners. Thank you very much, for your time. Thank you for listening to this interview. Thank you very much. Until next time, guys. Aloha.